If you love me, please don't judge me. Got my hands tied, the power's above me. Don't shoot the messenger, I'm just a puppet here. If you wanna place blame, then look to the puppeteer. Family, fortune, envy, jealousy, privilege, passed on, legacy, secret, sabotage, borderline, felony, suicide, subtract, selfish, pedigree, yeah.
How's it going, everybody? It's C-RadTV back here in our video. So, of course, it's time to continue on to What If NASCAR Had the F1 Points Format series. So, the last time in the series, we took a look at the ARCA West series in the 1990s and learned that a couple things would have changed under the F1 Points format, but for the most part, a lot of things stayed the same, and there were quite a few competitive title battles in the 90s. And in this part, we're going to continue on taking a look at the ARCA West series, and this time take a look at the series in the 2000s, the turn of the millennium, to see what would have changed if they used the F1 Points format, and what would have stayed the same. So, yeah. Anyway, before we continue on, let me just once again mention that if you all want to, make sure you follow the official Twitter and Instagram pages of the NASCAR with F1 Points format series, and this called NASCAR with F1 Points Central. Links to those pages in the description down below if you wish to, if you want to see some exclusive NASCAR with F1 Points content. So yeah, anyway, with that shameless plug out of the way, let's go ahead and let me show you the points formats that are going to be used in this for this part. So we got two different points formats, the top 6 format and then the top 8 format from 2003 on. And before we continue on, let me once again stress out that this is just a hypothetical scenario. I know everybody would have raced differently had they used the F1 Points format. This is just for fun. So now, with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and let's jump right into it. So the 2000 season, it was mainly a close 2-man championship battle between Brendan Gaughan and Bobby Daughter. Those two were the class of the field all year in terms of speed and consistency. A very close championship that in the end, the championship battle would go all the way down to the season finale at Irwindale Speedway, with Brendan Gaughan entering with a 6-point lead over Bobby Daughter. So Bobby Daughter would effectively need to win the race, and Gaughan would need to finish a couple of spots behind to have a shot at the championship, while Gaughan just needed to stay close to Daughter to have a shot at the title. In the end, in the season finale at Irwindale, both Gaughan and Daughter ran up front for majority of the race. In the end, though, Bobby Daughter would win the race while Brendan Gaughan would finish in third, which means that with the way it was set up, it meant that the championship would end in a tie between Daughter and Gaughan. In the end, the tiebreaker would be most wins, in which Bobby Daughter had 4 wins, to Brendan Gaughan's 2, and yes, those 4 even included the season finale. So 4 total to Gaughan's 2 total, which meant that in the end, Bobby Daughter would win the championship over Brendan Gaughan in a tiebreaker. So Daughter would be the 2000 ARCA West champion. So the 2001 season, it was all about Brendan Gaughan. Like, Brendan Gaughan was the class of the field all year in terms of speed and consistency. Like, nobody was on Brendan's level in 2001. And Brendan Gaughan would easily cruise to the 2001 ARCA West championship. So the 2002 season, it was a very close 2-man championship battle between Eric Norris and Austin Cameron. Those two were the class of the field all year in terms of speed and consistency. In the end, though, Eric Norris would fail to be consistent at key moments of the year when it mattered the most, and Austin Cameron would take full advantage of it and pull away late in the year. And Austin Cameron would end up winning the ARCA West championship, locking it up with around a race to go in the season. So Austin Cameron would win the 2002 ARCA West championship. Now, Eric Norris would have a second-place run in the season finale, while Austin Cameron finished deep in the field in the finale to gain some points on Cameron. But all that second place finish did was just make the championship look a lot closer than it actually was. Alright, so the 2003 season, we would have 4 drivers separate themselves from the rest of the field, and those 4 being Scott Lynch, Mike Duncan, Steve Portinga, and Mark Reed. Those 4 were the class of the field all season in terms of speed and consistency. In the end, though, Mark Reed would fail to be consistent in key moments of the year when it mattered the most, and he would be eliminated with around a race to go in the season. So in the end, the championship battle will go all the way down to the season finale at Mesa Martin, with Scott Lynch entering with a 5-point lead over Mike Duncan and a 7-point lead over Steve Portinga. So Mike Duncan would effectively need to finish in the podium spots to have a shot at the title and need Scott Lynch to finish deep in the field. Steve Portinga would effectively need to win the race and would need Lynch to finish almost outside the points to have a shot at the title. Scott Lynch either needs to stay close to Mike Duncan or Steve Portinga to end up locking up the championship. In the season finale at Mesa Martin, Steve Portinga would run in the bottom half of the top 10, and Portinga would end up finishing 6th, so that would not be enough. So that would eliminate Steve Portinga from the title picture. While Mike Duncan ran up front for majority of the race, while Scott Lynch ran in the top 5 for most of the race. In the end, though, Mike Duncan would end up winning the race while Scott Lynch would end up finishing 4th, which means that the championship would end in a tie between Scott Lynch and Mike Duncan. In the end, the tiebreaker would end up being most wins, at which Scott Lynch had 3 wins to Mike Duncan's 2. So in the end, Scott Lynch would still win the 2003 ARCA West Championship, but this time it would be in a tiebreaker over Mike Duncan. So Scott Lynch would still be the ARCA West champion in 2003. So in 2004, it was a very close 2-man battle for the championship between Mike Duncan and Austin Cameron. Those 2 were the class of the field all year in terms of speed and consistency. It was a very close title fight between the 2 that in the end, the championship battle will go all the way down to the season finale at Irwindale Speedway, with Austin Cameron entering with a 5-point lead over Mike Duncan. So Mike Duncan would have to finish up front and would need Austin Cameron to finish near the bottom of the top 10, while Austin Cameron just needs to stay close to Duncan to win the title. In the season finale at Irwindale Speedway, Austin Cameron ran up front for a majority of the race, while Mike Duncan would run near the bottom of the top 10. In the end, Mike Duncan would end up finishing 9th in the season finale, while Austin Cameron would do everything he would need to and he would win the race. And that win for Austin Cameron would be more than enough for Austin Cameron to win his 2nd ARCA West Championship by 15 points over Mike Duncan. So Austin Cameron would be the 2004 ARCA West champion. So for the 2005 season, we would have 4 drivers separate themselves from the rest of the field. Those 4 being Mike Duncan, Steve Portinga, Scott Lynch, and David Gilliland. Those 4 were the class of the field all year in terms of speed and consistency that separate themselves from the rest. In the end, though, late in the season, Steve Portinga and David Gilliland would both fail to be consistent in key moments of the year when it mattered the most. Both of them would be eliminated with around a race to go in the season. So in the end, the championship would go all the way down to the season finale at Mesa Martin Raceway, with Scott Lynch entering with a 5-point lead over Mike Duncan. So Mike Duncan would effectively need to finish 3rd or better to have a shot at the title, and would need Scott Lynch to finish outside the points to have a chance. Lynch just needs to stay close to Mike Duncan to lock up the championship. In the season finale at Mesa Martin, Scott Lynch struggled throughout the race, and they missed the setup completely on the car, and Lynch would end up finishing in 17th, well out of the points. While Mike Duncan, for most of the race, he ran top 5, top 10 for most of the race, but it was set up at the end to where if Mike Duncan could finish third or better, he would win the championship. In the end, Mike Duncan did everything he would need to do, and he would end up finishing second in the season finale. And that second place finish would be more than enough for Mike Duncan to lock up the championship by 3 points over Scott Lynch. So Mike Duncan would win his first ARCA West championship in 2005. So for 2006, it was a two-man battle for the championship between Eric Holmes and Mike David. Those two were the class of the field all season in terms of speed and consistency. In the end, though, Mike David would fail to be consistent in key moments of the season when it mattered the most. Eric Holmes would take full advantage of it and would pull away late in the season. And Eric Holmes would lock up his first ARCA West championship with around a race to go in the season. So Eric Holmes would still win the 2006 ARCA West championship. So the 2007 season, we would have 4 drivers separate themselves from the rest of the field. Those 4 being Mike David, Mike Duncan, Jason Bowles, and Brian Ickler. Those 4 were the class of the field all year in terms of speed and consistency and separate themselves from the rest of the field. In the end, though, late in the season, Mike Duncan, Brian Ickler, and Jason Bowles would all fail to be consistent in key moments of the year when it mattered the most. And Mike David would just take full advantage of it and pull away late in the season. And Mike David would lock up his first ARCA West championship with a race to go in the season. So Mike David would still win the 2007 ARCA West championship. So for the 2008 season, we would have a close two-man battle for the championship between Eric Holmes and Jason Bowles. Those 2 were the class of the field all year in terms of speed and consistency. In the end, though, late in the season, Jason Bowles would fail to be consistent in key moments of the season when it mattered the most. Eric Holmes would take full advantage of it, and he would pull away late in the season. And Eric Holmes would lock up his second ARCA West championship with around a race to go in the season. So Eric Holmes would become a 2-time ARCA West champion in 2008. So for the 2009 season, we will once again have another two-man championship battle between Jason Bowles and Eric Holmes, which sets both those drivers would once again be the class of the field all year like 2008 in terms of speed and consistency. So wash, rinse, repeat. But this time, the roles would be reversed from 2008, where this time it would be Eric Holmes that would fail to be consistent in key moments of the year when it mattered the most. And Jason Bowles would take advantage of it and pull away late in the season. And Jason Bowles would lock up his first ARCA West championship with a race to go in the season. So Jason Bowles would still win the 2009 ARCA West championship. So anyway, that's going to wrap it up for this part of What If NASCAR Had F1 Points format series. So this part wraps up here. So yeah, there was quite a few interesting things that would have happened in the 2000s in the ARCA West series had they used the F1 Points format. Like in terms of title battles that went down to the season finale, we had 4 championship battles go down to the season finale. And we had only 3 title changes under this format in this decade, and those being 2000, 2002, and 2004. So any changes that would have happened in the ARCA West series if they used the F1 Points format, it happened in the first half of the decade. And in the second half of the decade, nothing changed. So yeah, first half of the decade, a few things would change, but the second half, nothing really changed. So yeah, some very interesting things for sure in this part. So the next part is What If series. which will be the 2010s for ARCA West. We're going to wrap up the ARCA West by taking a look at the 2010s with the F1 points format and see what would have changed and what would have stayed the same had they used the F1 points format. So yeah, anyway, that's going to wrap it up here. That's all I got to say. The next part comes out depending on how fast I make it. Like I've said before, time and time again, I'm in no rush to get this series done. I'm in no rush for it. So yeah, anyway, that's going to wrap it up here. If you want, you can check out my Twitter, my Instagram, NASCAR with F1 Point Central. My new pages, where I will be posting exclusive NASCAR with F1 Points content, if any of you want to check that out. See, anyway, that's going to wrap it up here. That's all I got to say. Hope everyone's a great day, and I'll see you on whatever I make next. Peace.